So how do we link these behavioural change models and mHealth? Well, first of all, we have to acknowledge that mHealth is quite broad, and in other modules you'll find that it's a combination of information provision as well as actually enhancing the navigation through the health system. So as we've said, something like booking appointments and getting timely feedback of data, these are all very important. However, for the moment, let's just stick with the idea of mobiles being used to communicate information. It's very important to realise that knowledge, increasing knowledge itself, doesn't necessarily change the behaviour of people. And in fact, that's something that the mHealth in 2015, the mHealth community, is really wrestling with, because there are many examples of studies where we can see an increase in knowledge, but it doesn't necessarily translate into behavioural change. So for instance, let's take the provision of information on a desired behaviour. Let's take information on a health problem and instructions on how to improve behaviour. So let's say feeding children under the age of 2. That's a cognitive level piece of information. It's a piece of information that you should feed your children and you should wean your child on such and such a date. This is factual, intellectual, cognitive process. However, if we look at our behavioural change models from the last module, we see that cognitive processes are only one element in the overall model construct. Cognitive thinking speaks to the perceived benefit, and within the theory of planned behaviour, it talks in terms of outcome beliefs. But the question is, have we communicated an outcome belief by actually changing the weaning pattern? Have we communicated that there will be significant benefit, that there will be a significant different outcome? So people may receive a factual cognitive piece of information, but not be able to link it very easily with the benefit. However, then the model also says that we are strongly influenced by other people and what other people think. What will they think of me if I change the weaning pattern of my child? Are there cultural and social taboos? So it's not just a single piece of information that sits isolated, but it sits within the context of our situation. Let's take another example where perhaps the demonstration of a correct behaviour. So we could imagine a video perhaps showing how to prepare complementary food for our child. Now it's interesting, if you could get the video constructed by the local community, then you begin to introduce this idea of social norm and the peer pressure that people feel when they see each other doing something. They suddenly change and pick up on that model, and they think to themselves, therefore I should change. In Cambodia, for instance, we had very professional health videos made in a studio with the national comedian, and yet the people responded much more to locally made health videos that were made by the community for the community. Another example that the behaviour change models point to for the element of facts and cognitive level information would be in, let's say, problem solving. There might be a particular barrier to a new behaviour within the community and the way to overcome it. There might be a limitation if, say, we follow through with diversity of foodstuffs for children. We may be sending people the information that they should diversify their crops and get a range of nutritious food for the children. However, this may be in the context where they cannot easily change their cropping patterns. So the mHealth application may be saying you need to diversify your crops without giving enough information on the context and the ways to overcome the barriers to diversification. So in each of these mHealth interventions, we can envisage a small piece of information, and it's not necessarily set within the context of either the person's individual cost-benefit analysis, the person's individual process of decision-making, the context of the person's social network and what everybody else believes, and the context of the resources that they want. In short, each one of these interventions that we've discussed is only addressing one component in any of those behaviour change models. It rarely takes into account the stage the person is at in that change journey. Some people will be more willing to change. That's the early adopters. Some people have resistance to change. That's the late adopters. So how can we actually tailor an mHealth proposition to take into account of where people are at and their specific context? And particularly, the existing mHealth applications rarely takes into account other influences, social networks. There are some extraordinary things going on in data mining in the telecom industry, where people can predict how people might behave. And in a commercial sense, they might be on the verge of deciding to change telephone or telephone provider. So the commercial provider offers an upgrade specifically targeted to them. These emerging ways of data mining and big data can actually very specifically tailor the experience of the user. And we expect this to be happening within the mHealth applications. At the moment, they're mainly used for commercial propositions to increase the profits of mobile companies. But there's no reason why they shouldn't take into account the public good of mHealth propositions. And the behaviour change models help us point towards these other factors, the social factors, the other external factors, and the stage people are at in their journey.